Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies, the live video podcast for people who love a deeper conversation about the movies we watch today. We've got a banger of a show. We always have a banger of a show, but this is going to be, let's say, a little extra special. It is the 50th anniversary of the release of Jaws, one could say the first high-concept blockbuster, a movie we're still operating under, even though it came out 50 years ago, almost to the day. Here's the log line. When a massive killer shark unleashes chaos on a beach community off Long Island, it's up to a local sheriff, a marine biologist, and an old sea dog to hunt the beast down. But, of course, before we get into that, I think it's time to beg a little love, little ringy-dingy of the bell, little bit of like and subscribe. Let's get into it. And of course, before we can do that, we got to bring on my co-host with the most, the man, the myth, the legend, my borscht bro, Mr. Jim Chaboyko. How you doing, my friend?
Pretty good. I'll analyze this movie for you for 3,000, but I'll catch it and kill it for 10. I have a pocket because I think I established that Quint keeps his crackers in his pocket. So I have a pocket full of crackers to get me through the show.
Well, I'm glad you were able to establish that, Jim.
Thank you. Homework.
Listen, let me first of all, I did want to mention that we've got a friend of the show in the chat, Mr. Jelly Duck 100. You know what? I don't even think that was loud enough.
There we go.
That's the kind of thing our friend JD100, our man in Kuwait City, that's the kind of air horn he deserves. Jim, how are you doing? What's new? What's shaking in St. Boniface?
Great. staying on land for this week, I think, and so everything's cool. I have a few rivers to cross to get anywhere, but I think they're fresh water, so I should be safe.
Well, myself, Jim, I got a new book, or let's say a new to me book. I'm a big fan of buying, when I want a physical book, of buying used, especially for these that are basically, well, textbooks, film theory textbooks. It's by David Bordwell. It's The Way Hollywood Tells It, Story and Style in Modern Movies. I guess the argument he's trying to make here is that modern movies, and he basically takes a survey from 1960 up to, you know, the aughts, the noughts, that these films are, in many respects, while there have been changes, especially technological, that the style, the way Hollywood tells it, is still very much rooted in the classic Hollywood period, like going back to the 20s and the 30s, and even the teens. But if anyone wants to know more about the book, especially once I've read it, a review, let me know. And that includes you, my friend, Mr. Chaboyko.
Book club. Summer book club.
That's a great idea. Movie book club. Yeah. Comment down below, either if you're watching us live in the chat or on in a comment later. Maybe we should start a movie book club. That's a great idea. All right, Jim. I think it's worth it to just jump right into the spoiler zone. Of course, we are talking about Jaws. Jim, to start our conversation, the overarching question I kind of put to us was, you know, why are we still talking about Jaws 50 years after it was made? As we get into it, I'd love to hear, I've got more questions about that, but I'd love to hear what your initial thoughts are to that question.
I mean, yeah, I was thinking about this all day, actually, in anticipation of you asking it and also seeing the thumbnail.
Oh, and you're not fair, Droy Liberator. I will fix that shortly. Continue.
Oh, I had a different name on. Yeah, so I did have, so I've got the very short answer, which is it's super evocative and it absolutely delivers. I mean, at its most basic level, the trailer, the summary is evocative. The trailer, if you saw it when you were a kid, like before you'd seen it, tell me you wouldn't want to see it unless there was fear, elements of fear taking, like genuine phobia of sharks and water,
or just not even just. I don't do horror.
Yeah,
I don't do scary movies. Yeah,
or being a child and being afraid of it. And everything,
and just not allowed. Although it was the mid '70s, I can't believe the movies I was allowed to just go to.
Oh yeah. But in this case, I think there's an element of zeitgeist about it. It sort of hit at the right time. We're of a generation that it would have been released right around the time we were kids, and we found the stuff really interesting. And you'll find a lot of our demographic. It's the favorite movie of a lot of people. I just watched an interview with Simon Pegg, and they were just talking about Jaws for half an hour. Emily Blunt, so ladies too, and all kinds of people. It's one of their favorite movies, or got them into movie watching. I think there's a couple things going on there. For me, it was probably my first grown-up movie that I was allowed to see that I got.
Really?
And it's not because it's simple.
Very cool.
But you're being invited into the world of actual cinema that adults would watch. There's a bunch of other things that are personal to me personally, and we can discuss them later if that comes up. But I think it's evocative. It hit the zeitgeist at a certain time, and it's just so well done. And it's not just The reason why it fascinates is because it's not just a horror movie. It is a horror movie, but it's a chase movie. It's a horror movie. It's a character study or characters study, and it just does everything so well. Almost accidentally, all these forces coming together, whether it's John Williams, Steven Spielberg, the three actors in the leads, and even the cinematographer whose name escapes me at the moment. I'll check it out. I did look into him earlier, but it's all these things coming together, working on a
Bill
project.
Butler.
Yes, that they thought, and you should check out his CV because he did Grease and the Rocky movies and everything else, and his name isn't as household as you'd think it was. He just passed away at
The
101.
Conversation.
Yes, yeah.
One who flew over the cuckoo's nest.
Oh yeah, it's crazy his resume. So, and obviously he's working with underwater stuff. So that's an added element. But they took the challenge and they accepted the challenge and they absolutely delivered. And it's almost like all these forces accidentally came together to just like hit it out of the park. It was and it's subtle. It still looks good, and I imagine it's been enhanced and fixed up. It still looks great. The colors look great. It doesn't seem out of time. And there's real basic themes going there that I imagine we'll get into. But at its very heart, I think because it's evocative and because it's not just a horror, I think those are the things that are sort of working in its favor.
Well, let me probe that a little more. What do you mean by it's not just a horror?
Well, somebody, I was looking at an analysis today and they said, well, it was sort of deftly marketed. It promised a lot of shark. It promised like a lot of like the primary driver of this will be fear. And what echoes this is John Williams' score. Because of course, the thing that it's most known for is the 2-note dun dun dun. And there's stories about that Spielberg initially thought it was a joke because it was so simple. But it's absolutely like it's the shark. That music is the shark. But there's other parts of the score, and only after I started band class, playing the trombone, 8 and 9, I was able to sort of dissect it a bit. But there's a really great, almost like a jaunty adventure theme. And I looked at the soundtrack today, and there's Out on the Ocean or Out to the Ocean. And the other one is One Barrel Chase. Those are the tracks. And it's that dun 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 dun.
You see intimations, or let's say it's foreshadowing Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah. And it's, it's so flowery almost. It could be in like a 1950s Western if you added a couple, if you added the coconuts and a couple other little percussion things. But it absolutely works here. So there's dark and light there, right? So there's the darkness of the 2-note signature. And then there's the lightness of the chase. And then, so it's a monster movie. It's a horror movie.
Yep.
It's a chase movie. It's an adventure movie. It's basically a serial killer movie, probably one of the first, maybe. And so it's all these things. It's all these things together, and I don't know if there's anything new under the sun here, but they just work so well together, and it's so well shot. We'll go into it. There's a lot of horizontal motion that I love. There's timing. There's a thing. Brody ties the knot. Got it. Then the rod goes zzz, and then Quint shouts at Hooper. So it's like bing bang bomb. It's like everything comes in 3s or 4s, and it's got this amazing sense of rhythm to it too. The whole thing's fascinating. There's just a last little point here. Not only is there that dolly, that Hitchcock zoom that they use for Scheider on the beach, and I counted this time, and there's this kind of wipe that they do, this edit. So also on the beach, that same scene with that sort of dolly shot, they have people walking in front of Roy Scheider, right? So one person walks and you get a little closer. One person walks in front, and you get a little closer. One person walks and then you see the water. And they did this 6 times, and they changed the point of view each time, just with a little bit of yellow felt or beach clothing, and it's just it's a young director just having, apparently he was under a lot of stress. It sort of reminded me of the hands going up in 12 Angry Men and Sidney Lumet. Is like, this guy's open to trying like fun things or things that he's always wanted to try.
You think about what was going on in film at the time. You had the French New Wave, which kind of sets up the new Hollywood, which you could say this is the end point of, but definitely influenced by it all. Definitely a product of new Hollywood.
Yeah.
Or let's say a later maybe not new Hollywood, but really kind of out of that garden, out of that very brief garden, 67 to 75, I want to go back to the horror. I don't think it is all those other things. I think that it's like a Dracula movie. Well, like any monster movie, it's a monster movie. And all those elements are in every monster movie. Okay, we got to go hunt down the monster. We got to go find out where its lair is, where these are classic horror tropes. Even right down to the way it starts. And so I guess this is kind of one of the reasons we're still talking about it is it's a super well executed horror movie. It's all in the bright. It's very little is done in the dark, except when we're seeing the shark's point of view, which is also seen in the Creature from the Black Lagoon. One of the things that worked in that otherwise kind of meh movie. What about the feature? We'll come back to this in a second, but what about the feature of dumb luck? We have talked about this before. And a lot of people talk about how the shark, you rarely see the shark. You only see its results for the longest time.
Yeah.
And even there, it says he's chumming. Roy Scheider, Sheriff, chum. And then it's there, and it's like, has that moment. Gonna need a bigger boat. But otherwise, we only see hints of it. But a lot of this is because it's in subsequent interviews, a lot of stories that we've heard about the making of the film they could just never get the shark working. They built this really expensive prop, sucked up a ton of the budget, and they could never really get it working the way they wanted to. So they really had to shoot around it. And Spielberg himself said, if it was working, we probably would have seen a lot more shark, So is there an element of this execution, of this wonderful execution, that's just dumb luck? What do you think?
Oh yeah,
I say to DMG in the chat, first of all, great seeing you. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are too.
Yeah. Hey DMG.
Let's give DMG a big air horn. Great to see you at least online. At least hope you're doing okay.
Whoops, that's not the thing I was looking for.
Oh my gosh! Holy cow! The budget has increased.
I also want to got B40. Two things people will talk about 100 years from now: Jaws and Billy Squires' "Rock Me Tonight" video.
Absolutely.
That deserves this. And welcome to the chat. What was my question? Oh, dumb luck. What do you think about that?
Oddly, the Billy Squire video was also directed by Steven Spielberg. Little known. No, it wasn't. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this is sometimes, you can think, you probably can imagine being on set and like, oh, this is my second movie. The shark's not working. My career's finished. You can sort of sometimes, fate delivers you kind of some interesting results.
Constraints, unplanned for constraints.
Yeah.
Kind of that creative response to it maybe
Yeah.
raises your game or something.
Oh yeah, well, I was listening to an interview earlier today with the guy who played Hendrix, the sort of the dopey sheriff or the
Yeah.
second cop, and he was saying that his part grew because there was no shark. Like he got more lines and stuff, and so yeah, I have to think that it was well, that and things like Charlton Heston not being cast as Quint. You know, there's so much luckier, so much divine gifts from heaven.
Yeah, because was it Rashad just a miserable, sorry, but a miserable drunk.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
just a nasty, just an angry, mean at the time, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think there's. I mean, I was sort of obsessed a little bit about him and his career back when I was a kid, and I even went to the village where he used to live when I was in Ireland. And apparently, he just sort of got out of his car, clutched his chest, and fell down on the side of the road. He had the alcohol had sort of really just taken it all out of him, and
Yeah.
it eventually took him. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of tension there, but he's perfectly cast. Like he's, and in the past, there's been sort of, I've read accusations where he's a bit of a caricature, but yeah, he's sort of loud and obnoxious, especially when they're boarding the orca. But as that second half of the movie goes on, and they're going off on the adventure, you can see in his face that a lot of that sort of limericks and all those old stories and that sort of obnoxiousness is really just covering probably what's a pretty big existential sense of dread. You know, and you kind of read that in his face, and that, you know, how he looks at the life jackets towards the end, and and that kind of thing. And oh man, what a great job he did. And
Yeah.
just if you watch his face, there's another in the big, before the big Indianapolis monologue, there's a part where Roy Scheider sort of stumbles on. He says, "Oh, what happened there?" He goes, "Oh, it's a tattoo I had removed." No other details.
Yeah.
And you think, well, he's been very detailed until now. Why would he stop there? And then there's something else. Somebody says something else, and he goes, "Oh, it's the USS Indianapolis." And
Yeah.
then he does this, and he sort of lifts his cap, and he looks at Hooper because he knows Hooper will know that story.
Yeah.
And there's a beautiful second where everything breathes, and Hooper goes, and he just sort of like, the drunk goes away.
Yeah.
And he's just like, he loses his buzz, and he goes, what? You know, and he knows.
Yeah.
And so then Shaw launches into the monologue, but that's such a beautiful sort of a held moment.
Yeah.
Right there. So yeah.
So one of the reasons we might still be talking about this is just, you know, luck and like dumb luck. I'm not characterizing the shark thing as good or bad. We don't know. That's the movie we didn't get to see. But their response to it, but also their planning, their execution of this story, may be one of the reasons we're still talking about it. I'm not sure that's satisfying enough. Jim, you and I have watched lots of truly great movies over the last 5 years as we've been doing this podcast. I suspect the vast majority of them, especially ones that were released in, and we're talking great movies.
Yeah.
No one's going to be talking about in 50 years, or maybe academics, and that's it. So let me ask you this. It is, as best as I can find out, this was the first high concept film, the first blockbuster. You know, Hollywood, the studio system was going, how do we make movies? So all of a sudden you're getting a lot of movies that were really cool, but mostly because Hollywood had like, all the stuff we used to do to churn out hits wasn't working. And so all of a sudden, Warren Beatty, sure, make your Bonnie and Clyde thing. You know, Peter Fonda, sure, here, yeah, go on the road. We don't care. Just, oh, for the love of God. give us something that we can
Yeah.
predict. And then all of a sudden, not just is it a hit, it is huge.
Hmm.
Still, depending on how you count the money, it and Star Wars are still in the top 10 blockbusters of all time. The kind of hit that Hollywood hadn't seen since Gone with the Wind, maybe.
Mhm.
You know, the
Yeah.
last
Yeah.
true monster.
Yeah.
And this is at a time when television, everyone's getting color TV.
Mhm.
You know, so all of a sudden Hollywood's like, this is the way we can make money now. My question to you is one of the reasons we're still talking about it is was so successful. It's so defined not just how movies were going to be made for the next 50 years,
Mhm.
but that defined our taste, what we think makes for a great movie, a great summer experience, a great summer movie, all these things. Is it because this is the definer? What do you think about that?
I picked this
And to
up.
folks in the chat, I want to know what you think too.
I picked this up from my unread newspaper pile that I fully intend on getting to over the course of the summer. And Globe and Mail a few weeks ago chose the 25 best summer movies of all time. And you can guess which was number one. And I think in that it mentions that it was released to a grand total, which was big for the time, of 435 screens on the same weekend, and there were 35 commercials a night on it, which was a lot for the time. But yeah, I mean those are good points. I wonder if it's a generational thing again. You know, like if this hit a bunch of us at the same time and was fascinating for the same reason. But
Well, I think that's exactly what I'm saying.
yeah, yeah.
You know?
Well, you know, and you think of I would have been so my own personal story. I'll illustrate it this way.
Yeah, please.
I didn't have an older
Tell
brother
your
or
tale,
older
Jim.
sister, so I just was. But I
And
knew.
meanwhile, folks in the chat, tell us about the first time you saw Jaws. Who were you then? Were you a little kid? Was it something you saw on video? Did you see it in the theater? I did not see this in the theater. I think I saw it in a Blockbuster ABC special or something.
Oh my gosh!
I
Yeah.
saw the Jaws 2 in the theater, and I think I even had to not sneak in, lie to my mother about what movie I was going to. Anyway, sorry, Jim. Back to
Here's
you.
my ID, Dr. Rob Christensen, age 16. But,
Yeah, the
so,
theaters of Winnipeg in the 70s did not care.
No. So this was a movie that came out. I was a young one. I was in grade school, and I knew my parents went to see it. The commercials were all over TV. I thought it was a documentary, so I thought this was film of men being sent to their deaths. And they sort of, you know, did that guy with the sweater die? Did the guy with the cap and the jeans die? You know, that kind of thing. And I was fascinated by that part. When I finally saw it, and so this is the age where movies would run for 9 months at one theater, and there'd be lines around the block on the weekend, and they wouldn't change the movie if it was doing well. But when it finally, yeah, mine was the same thing. It was a Sunday night CTV movie during the summer, full on with commercials. So probably 3 hours. You know, they would expand it. And my mom let me watch it. I think it was probably in grade 6 or 7. And we had it on, you know, we had little black and white TVs in our room, and I was so sort of like stoked to see it and excited / nervous / frightened. I would literally run from TV to TV watching it. And when it turned out that Hooper had lived, I still remember just the joy, like the bubbles come up and Hooper, you know, it turns out that he did escape the shark at the end. And I was, yeah, like, you know, somebody just scored the winning goal in the Stanley Cup or something. But so that was my sort of experience with it. But, you know, because of how I observed it, I guess, it became a super evocative, almost like a haunted house or something like that. So when I finally got a chance to watch it, I wasn't watching it for the characterizations and that kind of thing. I was just watching it reactively to see, see what happened and if I could withstand the horror. And it ended up, being a pretty memorable movie watching experience, even on, a small black and white TV in the greenhouse townhouses in Saint Vital.
Yeah.
But
I was there in Le Village.
yeah, we moved to the village later on, but that's a whole other kettle of fish. But so that was sort of my experience with it. But the seed had been planted by me seeing those commercials and like just being like, I don't. Same thing with Jesus Christ Superstar. I thought these were people. I thought they actually killed the guy playing Jesus. Like I couldn't. I was a kid, and you sort of are unable to make that distinction. So it sort of really planted a seed for me. I suspect with other people, if they have older brothers and sisters that went to it, talked about it. My wife's parents took her when she was under 10, and apparently she didn't. She was afraid of the toilet after that for several years. So probably not the wisest decision, Rolly and Lona. But I mean, everyone. So in terms of zeitgeist, like almost every one of our generation has a story about it because it was so big and because it was a terrifying thing. Now, why are we still watching it? I think there's a couple of horror movies that people really still talk about. One is The Exorcist, one is Jaws. And I think it's maybe because they both have to do with mysterious realms. Like wherever Pazuzu lives, that we still don't know tons about that. With Jaws, it's the ocean, which is, even though Shark Week exists now and it didn't before, I that's an unknown realm to us too, and I think that's maybe when I say it's evocative, it gets people going, like it gets their curiosity going.
You know what? I'm gonna push back on two levels here, Jim. One, you know what? Yes, they both came out at the same time.
Well,
but one is definitely an occult horror, right? Body horror, like it's your standard spooky story. It's interesting about Jaws. This isn't a, what Blake Snyder would call a monster in the house movie. It is a, like, you want to not worry about Jaws. You don't want to get eaten by the shark. Don't go in the water. Swim in a pool.
Yeah.
No. Let me finish on this. I think this is important to talk about as far as one of the main themes of it, because every movie involves some kind of sin. Every horror, I should say, and of course we see it starts with a classic, who's the first one to die? A young woman. And why does she die, Jim? Because she's naked. She is trying to seduce a poor boy, too drunk to understand what she's up to. And then she runs and faces and gets the fate she deserves because, she was trouble. Yeah. And I'm being a little facetious, but that's a big thing that really kind of, it almost like sets the scene for all the 80s slasher movies. Oh, you like sex and boys? Whore, die, but then it immediately shifts to the economic greed of the town. Like I was like, you'd online, you'd talked about where the Orca sailed out of, the Shelbyville to Amity's Springfield.
Menemsha, I think it was called.
Thank you. But I think, though, Jim, one of the reasons this movie, I think, worked then and still might have some echoes now is what the cop and the technocrat are saving Amity from is economic destruction. Because that's really what the shark will die. It's just a fish. That they're like, no, our enemy is the environment. How can we exploit this resource? This thing that is ours by just sheer fact that we're here. the fish has got to go, the fish has got to die, but that it kind of plays that tension really well in this movie
Oh
of
yeah.
because the townsfolk, the mayor, it's of course it's like, of course one of them's a realtor, the local newspaper. Well, I'm gonna take the ad money because the hotelier, the motel woman is like, I'll pay a reward, and he's like, well, I'll bury the story. Like they're all the burgers, the fine burgers of Amity
Yeah.
Island are like, don't worry, we're all on the same team, because they're worried about the threat to their profits. Because
Yeah.
I strongly suspect that if people would still come to Amity Island and do other tourist things, and that, the shark would just eat the odd schmuck, but it wouldn't affect hotel bookings,
Mm.
they'd be like, oh, well, whatever, not our problem.
Yeah,
You know?
I really noticed that this time, I've always known it, but I suspect with what's going on down south these days, I really notice how it's like everyone's fault, kind of, and poor Brody is the only one that gets slapped by Mrs. Kintner, but they all sort of deserved it, and in fact, Mayor Vaughn, and you have to think that being a realtor is his number one thing. Being a mayor is just sort of like
I'm a little shocked that you're not wearing your vote for Mayor Vaughn.
well, I got my Jaws shirt, but I'll wear that one next week. I didn't think you could read the whole thing down, but what was I saying? Yeah, so just they're how they're all just liable for this, and how bad the newspaper owner is. Like he's just super like undermining his own shameless, yeah, duty. He's okay with getting the photos of the tiger shark, but yeah, he's willing to bury stories until it gets caught, and then he's going to run it
but
big.
not
Goes,
unwilling
hey, buddy
to
in New York owes me a
refuse the
favor.
ad money.
Yes, yeah,
Who still takes the ad money. It's like, oh,
yeah.
man's got to make a buck, got to make a living.
But you have to think that the mayor is first off a realtor, and mayor's sort of a sub thing of his, maybe a way to get control over things. And then on the ferry,
look at our own city, Jim. Who runs City Hall? Developers.
Mm-hmm.
Like every city.
when Brody's on the ferry, he really physically takes his arm and he goes, "Listen, Martin, like it's
your first summer here," implying it could be your last summer.
Yeah. And what are you saying? He says openly to him. But yeah, so I really noticed the economic aspect of it way more this time. I've noticed in the past, but then I sort of really paid attention. I also had the subtitles on, so I didn't realize that the guy who fed his wife's roast was one of the town councilors. Who fished with his wife's roast was one of the town councilors.
Yeah.
Because they name him just in the subtitles. You think, oh, that's that other guy. The one who said that he's making a joke, and he says, that $3,000, is it cash or check? And then the hotelier woman says, I don't find that funny. I don't find that funny at all. And that's a line my wife and I quote all the time. But
that's what that deserved.
Yeah. And then the other, anyway, we'll talk about, we can talk about foreshadowing later, but there's a couple of really neat moments that I quite liked as well.
Well,
but in terms of like comparing it to The Exorcist, I just mean that they're from realms we don't know about.
But
the monsters coming
but
from
a good movie should always be realms from, and I'm not sure that, again, then I'm not sure that that's why we're still talking about it. I think some of the, I got to admit, I want to come back to the idea of taste, and that this was a taste definer. Of course, Jim, you and I just saw the Phoenician Scheme.
Yes.
Here, look at this. I can even, because I'm prepared. We just saw this, and I would say, Jim, that film is, you have to be educated, trained, practiced to appreciate that film. Because taste is not a natural thing. You have children, it's like,
Yeah.
sweet. They'd eat salty and sweet all live long day if you didn't teach them about other foods. And by teaching them, I suspect at times it's like, you're not leaving the table until you eat those stupid vegetables.
Yeah.
Um, and what I mean here, though, is that you and I, a whole generation, was educated by this film to go that this is what a good film is.
Hmm.
And all the and not all of them. I've just referred to the Phoenician Scheme, but so many other films are kind of either trying to grab the same thing, Jaws, Alien, Jaws in space,
Yeah.
trying to grab the same thing, or to be, Star Wars, that everything is either trying to be it or react to it, but that it is this huge taste-making moment in our culture. And I want to put us, let's see if I can. You had sent this to me on Facebook. I've got the story here. Most U.S. exhibition executives think traditional moviegoing has less than 20 years as a viable business model. Folks, I will put a link to this in a pinned comment after the show. But yeah, I mean, you and I, when's the last time we've been at a packed theater? Now, part of it is yes, we go at 10:20 at night, and
Yeah.
a big movie like this, you'd mentioned the number of theaters, the number of screens, because it's now not in the number of theaters, it's in the number of screens, these big multiplexes. You can watch IMAX Mission Impossible 82 in 4 different screens in the same theater.
Yeah.
But yeah, streaming, the form, the art form is changing. And I'm thinking that we're still chasing after the same high, which is why we keep talking about Jaws. What say you, sir?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's ultimately what you want is that sort of, you want to leave the theater being blown away. And all those sort of apocryphal tales, or maybe they're true, I don't know, of people fainting or vomiting, or like just the crowd response to it is not exactly what you want. Also, you don't want it like Minecraft where children are violently throwing popcorn all around, but you kind of want that extreme. You want to sort of stumble out of the theater. I remember seeing The Fly in Vancouver, the Cronenberg version, and it was the only movie that I've ever been to where strangers in the urinal, beside each other in the urinals are talking about a movie. They're like, "Oh man, that was crazy," and it's the only one, because usually, little secret, guys don't really talk to each other in the bathroom in the theater, but this is the only time because everyone was so blown away by it. But I think people want that sort of being overwhelmed experience, and I think that's why all the things that are brought in, whether they're effective or not, 3D or wraparound, or the sound or the shaky seats or whatever. But ultimately, all you need is some few good characters, a great story, and some awesome music. And I think that's sort of chasing the same high. Yeah, I think there's an element of that to it as well.
So, well, let me put the mic back up. Well, is there then, Jim? Let me see if I can't. It is a well-made movie, a very well-made movie. You could say it's a great movie, full stop. but it does have this special moment as it being this first of a whole new wave of film out of Hollywood.
Mhm.
As it's defining an era, do we need to talk about it differently? And I'll give you what I mean by that. You watch this movie, and at the end of it, it's like, yeah, the shark is the bad guy. The townsfolk are, well, the townsfolk are ignorant hillbillies, peasants who need to be protected, and managed, greedy small businessmen who need to be protected from themselves and managed.
Mhm.
But in the end, you've got a technocrat and a cop, because the old sea dog, well, his ways are, he's too obsessed. He's too living in the past. He's still
Mhm.
angry about the sharks who evilly ate him and his comrades in WW2.
Mhm.
But 50 years later, you watch this movie, and I'm not saying that it's like, oh, this doesn't hold up, but I am saying it's like, yeah, the environment's the bad guy here. And,
Uh-huh.
is why? Is that what we should, if you were to just walk away, I mean, I say it regularly, it is part of the, as I put there, it's never just a movie. This film is trying to sell us something regardless of the intent of the authors. It is selling us that the police are there to protect us and we should just listen to them. They should have all these powers. The experts, we should listen to them. And that the environment, the beast out there, that's the bad guy. And they don't even have the decency of saying, well, actually, this one's somehow, been touched by the devil. It's like,
Mhm.
no, it's just a shark, and shark are terrible, which is one of the reasons why shark are endangered species now. The movie
Yeah.
was so effective in
Mhm.
placing the villain hat on the shark, like all is better now that the shark is dead. And it's like, I don't know, are they still, you know, like I suspect any sharks who came by after that were like, oh my goodness, this place is so polluted, we're not eating anymore, you know,
Yeah.
when we're not getting hunted out. So I guess maybe my question here, as I give that little spiel, is let's assume, let's give it 20 years. The exhibition, let's say these exhibition guys are right. Put that up again. Although I got to admit, a part of me is like, maybe that's because they're forever searching for the next Jaws that will save them.
Yeah.
Like think of Dan Murrell's regular coverage about recovery in that. Less and
Yeah.
less people as a percentage of the overall population are going to movies. That, my friends, is a fact. Uh, what are we going to be saying about this movie if we're still talking about in 20 years? Theaters have gone not the way of the dodo, but they've shrunk down to almost like a museum piece.
Mhm.
That it becomes something where the upper middle classes, oh, I'm going to see the latest cinema release.
Cinema. Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, aren't you
The
fancy?
moving pictures.
Yeah, no, and it'll be much like going to here. Most communities have a theater,
Mhm.
that shows plays. We've got a few theaters. Probably our biggest single one is the Royal Manitoba Theatre Centre, a big regional theater. But
Mhm.
it's not like they're putting on, new wave theater. They're playing the hits. So in 20 years, the industry, the exhibition, the big screen is shrunk, and they only play the hits, so it's gonna be re-releases, like, at the end of this year, end of the summer, they're re-releasing this film. What will we be saying about this movie then? What do you think?
Hmm. I sort of wonder if it's, it's not of its own fault, but it maybe started a trend where even though it's a good movie, maybe movies got less better because of it. It changed maybe the studio's desire, the reason why they put out movies. I mean, it's always been a business. It's always been
Yeah.
about money.
Oh, yeah.
But maybe
we live in the capitalist mode of production.
yeah. But maybe it's less about, nowadays it's less about quality than it is about profit. I mean, that's sort of an easy thing to say.
And I don't think
or anything
I don't
new,
think
really.
they were committed to quality then either.
No, so you have to wonder if good movies are accidental. Like they're just happy accidents. But with Disney's sort of desire to remake everything except for Song of the South into live action, that why won't they make that one?
Oh, wait, I mean,
yeah.
who knows?
Give it 20.
King Trump may direct them to, or they won't get their latest
movie.
merger.
Yeah.
I always loved that.
You could probably, in 20 years, I wonder if you could drop this on its head, roll this movie around and say, it's a movie about a guy who's trying to save sharks, and they end up going after businessmen. just sort of reverse everything.
Well, here's, you know what? Probably one of the big blockbusters, although nothing that hits the success of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. But I think of John Wick. Bear with me here. This is something I've talked to you offline about, and I want to do an essay
I'll
about
just have
this.
a cracker.
All right.
I got a whole bowl.
Ahab.
They're
You betcha,
delicious.
Ahab. Who's your
wheat
queequeg? When I think of John Wick, I think it's like, that's a horror movie. It's not a horror movie, but it kind of is. You have a callow youth violating a rule, a sin. And although given an opportunity to go back, doesn't. And so all of a sudden it's awakened a beast, as being John Wick. We're in a way, John Wick is like, hey, let's do Jaws, but from the perspective of the shark.
Yeah.
I asking myself that same question, I do think it's going to be talked about, but it's going to be treated more as something you've said on the show, more of a historical document. Some of my research before this, a lot of people are talking about, the context, the socio-political context that it came out of, talking about Watergate and the cynicism of the time. And I'm like, I'm not quite buying that completely, but I can't ignore it. That was a big story at the time. I think, though, this is a sort of a resurgence of filmmaking that is trying to be frightened, but rest assured you'll go home safe. You can enjoy yourself away from your worries. Escape to the cinema again. Even though I think what we've talked about and other people have said before, this is not the first time people have talked about Jaws.
No.
It cannot escape its context, and it can't even escape resonating now. It's such a good movie that I'm thinking, oh my God, this is COVID. And the reaction from some quarters is like, what do you mean you're going to close the beaches? What do you mean we got to wear masks? What do you
Oh,
mean we
yeah.
can't congregate? And the crazy anything to avoid dealing with the real problem, you
Mhm.
know? And hoping somebody would
Undermining the scientist.
yeah, yeah. Undermining the scientist. And they're all white. All white people love a cop until they're not doing what they want them to do. And then all of a sudden the cop becomes the bad guy,
Mhm.
you know? It's
You'd love to get your
classic.
name in the National Geographic. I can't with this guy. I can't.
You know, and so we'll treat it as a historical document. We'll treat it as wow, this is the start of the blockbuster period.
Mm,
I think what's the most interesting thing about it now is we're looking at this first blockbuster, this first high concept movie at a time when, that may actually be ending. You know,
yeah.
one of the most Star Wars is probably, a handful of films that can say, wow, everybody knows it, even if they don't like it. The person who says, I am unfamiliar with Star Wars is, well, a liar.
Yeah. Yeah.
They may not have seen it. I would buy that. I'd roll my eyes, but I'd buy it. But that they don't know it is just,
Mhm.
but one of the most remarkable, there have been some great within that Star Wars franchise. There have been some remarkable television to come out of it, including just now Andor. And I had mentioned it to other people, and they're like, I don't know what that is. And that is no BS. They don't know what it
Mhm.
is. It's not part of it. Even something as big as even something as big as Game of Thrones, Lost, some of these other big cultural touchstones, I don't think were anywhere near as big as the end of MASH, anywhere near as big
Yeah.
as Seinfeld was at its peak.
Mhm.
We are reaching an end to that kind of movie because how we engage with movies is just fundamentally changed. And
Yeah.
so, I think it almost behooves us at this 50-year point to kind of go, so when did it end? Has it ended already? Because it's not like Mission Impossible. Was it that great? I mean, it was a solid flick.
Is it going to make its money back?
It's a lot.
Perhaps.
You like to say it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Well, it's also number 8.
Yeah.
Rarely do sequels do better.
Mhm.
Some do, but
He's so
most
mysterious. He
don't.
needs 8 movies to unveil his full character.
Exactly.
So much depth.
Well, let me ask you this, Jim. I think we do have to kind of wrap. We gotta bring this in.
Sure.
DMG, I refuse to admit this. Dragon Movie Guy in the chat, great to see you, man.
Yeah.
He says, I refuse to admit anything birthed in 1975 is 50 years old.
Weird, hey?
I'm shocked. I was 8 years old at the time.
Mhm.
Nope, not gonna happen.
50.
DMG, you're absolutely right. Yeah, think of the world we lived in. Cold
Yeah.
War, still really that what East-West was the Cold War. Nixon had already been to China, I think, by then. and then run out of
Yeah.
office. We saw the fall of the Soviet Union, and notwithstanding the fact that that Russia is taking up a lot of our bandwidth, it is not the power it once was. Nowhere near it. It's got an economy the size of Italy. It's got an economy 25% larger than us, Jim. It's 3 times larger a country.
Mhm.
So, you know, it's poor. It's poor. The Ukrainians, poorer still, have shown that their military is a paper tiger. And China is probably the new hegemon, you know, notwithstanding, the Americans deciding to bomb Iran. Like, what happened in 79 wasn't less than enough.
Yeah.
You know, something we grew through. We've had this great chat. I gave that weird little history thing, but let me bounce this back to you. Why are we still talking about this movie 50 years later? Has your answer changed, modified? Do you think we've given a good answer in this conversation? At least, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's a I primarily at its heart, I think it's just a really well-made movie. The mission is clear, you know, audience in the cage, cage in the water, sharks in the water, our shark, bam.
Yeah.
Strong characters, and it's just freaking exciting, you know, and everything's working. Cinematography's working, score is working. The shark wasn't working, and that benefited everything. You know, it's such a, and it just holds up. Like the shots hold up, well filmed, enthusiastically filmed. Motion, there's constant motion, and it just keeps going. Like there's even in this quiet scenes, there's some form of motion going on. And I think it's, you know, I think Spielberg is a big part of that. And then there's just the elements of the zeitgeist that's steeped in it. It was so big and so scary, and it affected so many people that I think you and I, as young guys at the time, I think it just sort of worked. Like for my
children, even
yeah, I think the seed got planted, so that when we finally saw it, it was sort of both a relief and like super stimulating. I was like so stoked to see it. Yeah, you know, you remember those Sunday night movies, the CTV Sunday night movie tonight, Jaws, and that's when they used to have network premieres.
Yep,
because this is
big advertised.
Back when VCRs were $1,000 and movies were $100 each, and they didn't have video stores. That was the big thing, is that a movie would come out and 3 years later they'd have their network debut.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal.
Yeah.
And this was a big deal. So all those things sort of planted the seed. And for me, it just made it super evocative.
The first time I saw Alien, I was at cadet camp.
Oh my gosh.
13 years old in Quadra, BC, British Columbia.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I was just talking about somebody about Quadra today.
And they showed it on a projector because that was the time when part of their distribution would have been, oh, we got to make 16 millimeter prints so that we can rent it to schools and, you know, other groups, you know, probably for an outrageous fee, you know, although they may have been, oh, well, you know, it's for the military or whatever, military entertainment, you know, they would have rented a print to go out to bases. I'm sure that thing was, they didn't have a big 35 mil projector. They had a 16 mil projector. That thing was printed in 16 mil. Yeah, no, I remember being terrified by that film. Only a few years later, everyone's got video. And now I watched it. I watched this film again on my big screen television, and then on my computer, and then on my tablet as I was eating. You know, like are, and this is, I think, one of the reasons why we still, for me, Jim, yeah, I would agree with you. Would we still be talking about this if it wasn't such a great full stop film? No way. We would not. Mediocrities do not stick that long unless they have like a Mona Lisa-esque story of being stolen and then, ransomed back and all that. We talk about it in a large part because it is such a great film. But I think why we still talk about it 50 years later is in that how, because it was first, because it was so successful, because it showed capital, the studio system, oh, this is how we make movies. It became a thing that defined an era in every way, including, yes, I appreciate that Quentin Tarantino, is like, oh, the new wave, the French new wave is what I was reacting to, but yeah, these films, and one of the reasons we'll look at films that are reacting to this is because they're reacting to this. They're going, oh, wow, something different. But that it is the first, the taste definer that is still affecting us now. And this is, I think, the thing that makes it so fresh even today. And then, of course, I read I'm paraphrasing Karl Marx here. He had said something to the effect, he was referring to, is that why do Greek odes, sure, a Greek ode was written in a particular classical Greek context, but it yet insists on entertaining us, intriguing us today. And I'm only paraphrasing him a bit there. He really was. He was kind of making a point about, hey, yeah, context is important, but that doesn't mean it can't resonate for future generations for different reasons. There's something about it. So that's that greatness. But I think a big chunk of it is yeah, it was first. It was the first, the definer,
Yeah.
And maybe even better, Jim, unlike Star Wars that gets bogged down in all the other, let's be honest, for every really, like the first couple of seasons, The Mandalorian, Andor, just like, I said it before, I'll say it again. I am so amazed that as a 10-year-old, I got to see Star Wars in the theater when it came out. But here I am in my late 50s, and I could be excited about a Star Wars thing that's totally meant for an adult. That's amazing. That's a remarkable thing. But the vast majority of Star Wars content is just crap. It's just the most paint by numbers, generic. We gave Lucas $4 billion. We want that money back. And so, yeah, Jaws it had some stupid sequels.
Yeah, which I don't acknowledge,
But
really.
But and nor do they hurt the original piece. They didn't spawn a world.
Yeah.
They didn't suffer the fate of even, never-ending aliens. It's like, I mean,
everything.
The last Alien we saw, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't bad. That's it.
Yeah.
That's what it gets. Wasn't bad. Too long an ending, or as McNulty
it doesn't.
Too many bonus endings.
You're right. It
endings
doesn't
we
seem
didn't ask for. It's like, oh my God, there's another one.
The first Jaws movie seems to just exist above the others. I think I saw one video today and I didn't watch it, but it was like, I rate the 4 Jaws movies. I'm like, I can probably guess how this is going to go. But yeah, you're talking about that it's good. I mean, by virtue of the fact that it's so good that we're still talking about it. I think too.
I would go like beyond good. It was great. Like
Great,
it's
yes.
just great filmmaking, but there's something more that is the reason we're still talking about it.
I think too, just in that sense, some of the original choices that have been made or just sheared fully off. I mean, famously in the book, Hooper has an affair with Mrs. Brody, which is just that would I think that would run it aground. I think Charlton Heston being cast as Quint would be horrible. They asked Duval to be Brody, but he wanted to be Quint. I don't know about that. Sterling Hayden might have been interesting, but yeah, I just think they landed like they and you know they didn't have some of these guys. Yeah, they didn't have some of these guys until about a week ahead of time. And Shaw didn't even want to do it. And he said his wife and his secretary said, "Oh, this is so good." And he was like, oh, okay, let's do it. But
plus we have a mortgage payment. Try not to drink it away.
I got other wives to pay for. Yeah, so I should mention too, right in behind me there is the play book, I saw the Shark is Broken on Broadway 2 years ago, and it was Ian Shaw, Robert Shaw's son, who played Robert Shaw in it, which is just trippy. And I got to meet him, and I got to meet him, and I got an autograph from the Colin Donnell who played the Roy Scheider role. The other guy wasn't doing autographs; he had a big mask on. The one who played Dreyfus, so he was a little bit neurotic about contact, which is playing the Dreyfus
actor.
Role. Not surprising. So yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah. So yeah.
All right. Well, listen, sorry to cut you off there, but I think we're now getting into the, and what about this? Off. And what about that?
Yeah.
Folks, Dragon Movie Guy, great to see you in the chat. Jelly Duck 100, thank you very much. B40, great. One comment, a chef's kiss of a comment. Mwah. Thank you very much. One more time, I'll beg you all for a like, a subscribe, and maybe a ringy-ding of that bell. Mm-hmm. So on that note, yeah. Thanks for coming out, everybody. Good night.